All right. Well, welcome to our Beers in the Back. We've actually changed the format ever so slightly. It's Beers in the Boardroom, I guess, to the degree that this is a boardroom.
Is this our boardroom?
We asked Scott to wear something brighter, but I guess that's all you could come up with.
Beers in the Back with Blaze Orange.
Beers in the Back with Blaze Orange. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about today's stocks report, March 1 stocks report, and the 2026-2027 planted area. I guess, Bill, you are the analyst. Do you want to kind of take us through the numbers and tell us what that means? And I'll sit here and watch.
Throw popcorn at me. So I don't know. We got many surprises in the stocks. The corn was right about where we expected. Kind of confirms the big feed and residual for USDA that they've got in the balance sheet for 25-26. 9024 was the number. The soybean stocks were larger than the trade expected, about where I thought, but larger than the trade had expected. I don't know if
they were about 40 million bushels over trade X.
42 million larger than the trade, but it was a wide range. So, what we look at in this report is to say we get the March 1 stocks of soybeans, and we say, do we need to revise that crop up or down on September 30th, which is kind of what they do at the end of the year. And I don't think we have that evidence here that would say we do that. Wheat stocks right on the trade guess at 1.3 billion even. So nothing there on these stocks. So, you could call the soybeans a little bit bearish from this, but I don't think there's much to work on here in terms of the stocks numbers being a catalyst for market direction or price moves.
Is it, you're talking about corn residual and everything, and I'm sure there's some people watching this that are saying, I think you want to take them through why you've always told us in the past that the corn market is Protestant and the bean market is Catholic.
Yes. So the soybeans are the Roman Catholic. They confess their sins and atone for them on September 30th if they're out of line from what the crop was stated in January. Corn doesn't do that. They don't go to any confession or anything like that. And there's no big adjustment to the corn crop at the end of the year. So
in the primary reason, though, that the two big demand components for beans are both measured, exports and crush. Yes. And we measure both. So if the USDA misses the size of the crop, you got to confess your sins. Where corn, you count everything. You count what you get your estimate of production. You know what you imported. You know what you exported. You know what you ground for ethanol. And any corn and you count what you have left at the end. And any corn you can't account for, you just assumed an animal ate it, right?
Yes.
So it's and that's one of the biggest demand.
1/3 of total demand. So
yeah,
when you look at that, that feed residual every year is probably got a lot of errors every year, but it doesn't correlate well with animal numbers. It doesn't correlate with meat production. The thing it does correlate with is the beginning supplies, and that's the methodology I use. It's the methodology USDA uses, and it gets you pretty close to the number. If you adjust it for how many DDGs you might have coming in the system as another factor, but 6.2 billion is a good number. There's nothing to USDA needs to adjust.
Nothing sticks out. Well, I didn't mean to take us off into that detail.
That's okay. So on the plantings, we have this rotation between corn and beans, and we did it again this year. We started with a big corn acres, much bigger than last year, 98.8. And then this year's are projected to be 95.3 million acres. So a drop of 3.5 million acres in the corn acreage. And those same states that were going higher in lower in corn, we're going higher in soybeans, because we ended up with from 81.2 million acres last year at 84.7. Lo and behold, 3.5 million acres less corn, 3.5 million acres more soybeans.
Coincidence? I think not.
Oh, well, no, I think it was. I think there's room for more upside there. I'm surprised like cotton acreage was up, and that shocked me. And that's acreage could go to beans. Rice acreage down about 15%. So Probably from this number, if there's any bias I would have, it would be that we would end up with a larger bean acre number than is projected here. We do get from this corn acreage a stocks use that's declining. It's not treacherous, but it is a little bit more snug. Little over 2 billion bushels at the end of 26-27, and a stocks use of 12.8%. So that's tighter than a year ago, but it's not going to drive us too far until we get into the growing season. The beans pretty plentiful soybean situation. We're gonna have to find a way to sell a lot of soybeans for export, and that's not necessarily in the cards right now.
We got the EPA announcement Friday. I think the market is expecting a big crush number, but there are some, as you know, we're not going to talk about that much today, but there are some wildly bullish soybean oil for fuel scenarios out there that I'm not ready to not ready to spend my money buying that horse yet. But
margins are good, and whatever the crush capacity is, we're going to use it in the next year. It would appear, because demand for oil is going to be strong. Crush capacity is increased, and crush margins are off the charts good. So everything is full bore ahead on corn or soybean crush, and that'll be at the expense of exports, which Brazil and Argentina are waiting in the wings to replace us on.
More than happy to do it. Yeah.
We've got a trade deal with China. Aren't they going to come to our rescue on bean exports?
Yeah,
I know that was a baiting you type question, but
I'm not jumping off sides for that one. There's nothing has been signed on any of these, so that in China's case, they're reluctant to make a big commitment.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised. Mark, I must agree with you. I was a little bit surprised that we didn't get a little bit more of a bullish reaction on beans to that acreage number. That's a good bit, 850 or so million acres, 1,000 acres below the average trade estimates. I guess we got some of those beans that we would have lost back in the stocks number. Maybe that's part of the reason for why we didn't get much more of a reaction to it. But
yeah, but bigger things to worry about today, like are we going to be engaged in a war 2 weeks from now or not? So
yeah,
a lot more attention being paid to that, I think, and that to some degree supersedes whatever the implications are here. That could override that. The wheat was a little bit on the friendly side, supportive. We had 45.3 million acres last year planted to wheat in the U.S., and the report says 43.8, so down 1.5 million from a year ago, and below a full million acres below the trade guess. We took winter wheat acreage from a January estimate of winter wheat seedings to this number, down 600,000, and net of all the other states, Oklahoma was down 600,000 acres. So we're planting less winter wheat. It's the lowest since 1919, and I think the other spring was on the low side as well. So we're down there at the lowest level since 1970. So apparently there's more money to be made planting other things other than wheat in the U.S., and that's what the trade is saying. Durum wheat is down pretty significant. Durum acreage is down significantly as well. So I think the combination of smaller acreage and coming into the spring and out of dormancy in a dry situation puts more burden on the market to get some precipitation, especially in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas.
Well, I guess a couple of questions come to mind, I guess, on both sides. Let's start with wheat, since that's where you're at. You said 600,000 fewer winter wheat acres in Oklahoma?
Yes.
What would those go to? I mean, the North Dakota is going to be my next question, and that's a little bit maybe easier to answer, but what would we be losing?
Probably fallow. They have a significant amount of fallow if it's too dry, but when you get the number in January, you kind of live with that, and then you get to the spring and you find out they didn't plant them. There's some logic to that it could be just going to fallow. I don't know of any and other crops.
Could be some cotton in the panhandle. southwest Kansas, panhandle of Oklahoma, a little bit in the panhandle of Texas is some cotton ground, but not significantly, I wouldn't think.
Maybe in December, they thought, well, this is gonna be weak because we're gonna get rainfall, and they didn't, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is, we have a smaller base than we had, presumed, 90 days ago.
Maybe a little off subject, but how would the USDA not pick that up in their January number in Oklahoma?
A different set of farmers lied to them.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Enough. I guess the other, when you look at the spring acres and the Durham acres are a good bit below, I guess, expectations. Where do you think those acres go? You were talking to me earlier today about North Dakota.
Well, canola, which is primarily going to be in North Dakota, is up 15%. So we got a big boost there, and we got a recovery.
Farmers noticed the veg oil price, huh?
Yeah, they did. Sunflower acres are up 8%. So we got a couple things that are going, and there's North Dakota. We think of the I states in the Midwest of corn, soybean, corn, soybean, corn, soybean. And up there, they've got a rotation of a dozen crops that they can look at and aren't necessarily beholden to.
Yeah.
Whatever you planted last year, plant the opposite next year, which is what we do.
Yeah.
In a lot of the corn, soybean areas.
We had a crop tour up there a couple of years ago, and what do we see? 19 or 20 different crops, something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of ag diversity when it comes to what can go in up there. And I think that's one of the other comments you and I, when we were sitting in here talking about this before we started the call. I think we have this tendency, and I've been guilty of this for much of my career. We get hyper focused on the corn bean price ratio and what is that Iowa farmer, what is that Illinois farmer in the heart of the Corn Belt going to do? And that's not the guy who changes the acreage number very much, because he plants corn this year and he plants beans next year,
Yes.
Almost without exception. And that's this, you said it looked like, I think a sawtooth was what you said. It's not a 50-50 acreage rotation in corn and bean grounds, because not all farmers do the same thing every year. But we go like this on corn and bean acres in those I states about every year. And these differences are made up on the fringe states.
Yes. So over time, we've added acres in a lot of the extreme western Corn Belt, Kansas, North Dakota, South Dakota at some extent, that's where we've added. The genetics have allowed more planting of corn and soybeans in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where you get it may sawtooth, but it's probably in an upward trend in there. So that's probably still the case, that farmers they're not going out to their field to plant with a bag of corn and a bag of soybeans and then looking at their phone to see what the ratio is between the two. They've got this already decreed well in advance, and for a variety of reasons, agronomic and logistics in the fall, and just wanting to stay in a rotation that benefits their soil.
Yeah. Well, one of the other, I guess, questions that I have wondered, we get this number, and even before we got it, I was saying on beans, I think the market's mind might be adjusting to a little bit bigger bean number than whatever we get, because fertilizer prices have gone basically vertical since this war started. Not really hearing of a whole lot of availability issues yet, but you wonder if that's not coming too. And as Joanna pointed out to us last week, when she had this, on the panel with us, the farmer surveys, these 60 to 70,000 farmer surveys that the USDA sends out and gets back, that is largely the biggest input to these numbers. Those surveys went out before the war started and fertilizer prices went up. By the way, corn takes a lot more fertilizer to grow than beans. And some of the surveys probably came back before prices went up, and some went up after prices went up, came back after prices went up. A lot of farmers have got fertilizer pre-bought. We had this big open fall last year, so a lot of anhydrous went in the ground last fall after harvest. And so, but are these higher fertilizer prices for that, what looks to be a relatively small sliver of farmers that maybe don't have their fertilizer booked? is that going to shift some last minute acres out of corn into beans in some of these fringe areas?
It's like I said this morning on our call, 90% or more of the farmers today have that that fertilizer already procured. If they don't, they probably have bigger issues. I think a bigger determining factor for whether they might shift is if they, let's say they're in North Dakota, right? And they don't get that corn for some reason. It's a late spring and they can't get the corn in. Now their clock's ticking and they're behind the 8 ball on time. And you'll see, I think time is a bigger indicator of shifting acres.
Maybe even the fertilizer.
The fertilizer.
Interesting. Yeah, because corn and canola are very fertilizer intensive crops, expensive crops to plant that just got a good bit more expensive with the fertilizer costs. So you wonder if that farmer on those fringe areas, not in the rotational ground, it's going to get hard to get that rotational ground in the heart of the corn belt to move. You wonder if some of those fringe areas, if we don't affect some, we're not talking about a lot of acres, because to your point, a lot of this fertilizer is already booked.
Yep.
Good bit of it's already in the ground. But you just wonder if we're not going to see, and I think maybe that's one of the other reasons for what is maybe a less of a price reaction than I would have guessed to that bean number. Because the market's maybe already dialing in an uptick by the time we get to June. I think Joanna pointed out to us on the panel at the NIOP that the USDA will use the same basic methodology for our final planted area numbers in June, the end of June, on that report as they use for this one. So
yes, and with an early planting, they probably gets the pie a little bit bigger and maybe favors corn. But the main thing that a farmer has to remember is I have to plant something or I'm not going to get big bucket of money in the mailbox from the government.
Yeah, good point.
So they will be planting. If it's a wet spring, and it still could turn out to be one, you know, in June, they'll be out there trying to get soybeans in. So
yeah. So before we wrapped up, now that you mentioned weather, we're probably obligated to talk a little bit about early season weather. I think it's been dry as we've gone through March here, but our council has been, yes, it's dry. We got 40-something% of corn and bean ground, and 55% of winter wheat ground is experiencing some level of drought. But we've also been counseling our customers that, yes, it's dry, but it's early. I would argue we were set up very similar last year, and then we had a really nice spring. We get some rain, we get a break to get crops planted. We get another rain on the crops that we're in. We get a break. We got the crops planted. It's very, very early. It's not even April 1st yet, but we're dry. But we got quite a bit of rain in the 7-day that was in our key market drivers deck this week. Got above average precip in the 8 to 14-day window, not as much in the 6 to 10. So still early. Weather can still go a lot of different directions, but maybe so far so good.
Next Monday, we get our first USDA NASS crop condition report and crop progress. And then that'll be a weekly report that we get, you know, all the way through the fall. I am beginning to be more concerned about hard red winter wheat. I've never been terribly concerned about soft, just because of the things that you've mentioned. You know, we get more rain in soft wheat country, and that's evidenced by this forecast of the
7 days. A lot.
The 7-day, we got, you know, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana. Should get a nice bit of rain. But Kansas is deteriorating. Texas and Oklahoma, and Nebraska and Colorado were already in rough space. Kansas today is down in the
didn't you say 49?
I thought it was 46.
Okay.
46%.
Mid-50s, less than a month ago.
Yeah, 50. It was in the 52 range, 55 range at one point. So it's slipping, and that hard red winter wheat needs a drink. Bill did some analysis last week on that, and he's probably coming down on his number quicker than I would, but I'm catching up in a hurry if we don't get a drink.
Yep. Definitely need some water.
Yep.
our projection today on hard red winter wheat would be a crop of 668 million, down 17% from a
Yeah.
big yield, record yields last year.
That'd be an owie. That'd be a big owie.
But as you've always taught me, Scott, we got time.
Well,
but we're getting close to not having as much time.
I know this is the
April, May is your months, right?
This is the most important time, and we're coming out of dormancy now, and so it really needs a drink. But the next 60 days will tell the tale.
Yep.
Really will.
Yep.
All right. Any parting shots before we sign off here today? We covered it pretty good.
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. As always, be careful out there.